Good evening, you're watching TKC Daily, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. First up, South Korea is battling apocalyptic wildfires. Survivors are calling it hell on earth. We will take you to the front lines of this disaster. Then, Turkey is in turmoil. Protests against president have erupted across the country, shaking his grip on power. Is this the beginning of the end? We will decode. Over in the United States, Donald Trump just introduced new election rules that could change the way Americans vote forever. Some calls it necessary, while others call it voter suppression. What's really going on there? We will explain. Meanwhile, in a surprising move, Russia and Ukraine have agreed to a ceasefire in the Black Sea. But don't get too excited. There's a big catch, and this catch could change everything about the ceasefire. And finally, the Israel-Gaza conflict is taking another dark turn. Hamas is warning that hostages will return in coffins if Israel attempts a rescue operation, while Netanyahu threatens to seize Gaza land. Is an even bigger escalation on the way? We will decode. We have got all this and more, so stick around. Let's get started. Let's start with South Korea. South Korea is facing one of its worst wildfire disasters, with at least 24 people dead and more than 23,000 forced to flee their homes. The fires, described as unprecedented by acting President Han Duck-soo, have left some 26 people injured, including 12 in critical conditions. The wildfires started on Friday in Sangcheong County and spread rapidly to other parts of the country, and this was fueled by strong dry winds. Fire experts say the blaze in Wheesung is growing at an unimaginable speed. The situation has become so severe that the government has declared a state of emergency in several regions of the country. Authorities have also issued a dry weather alert, as little to no rainfall is expected soon, making it even harder to control the fires in the area. Among the destruction is a 13-year-old Gwan temple in Wheesung, one of South Korea's most significant Buddhist sites. The fire also destroyed a national treasure from the Joseon dynasty. Authorities managed to save some valuable relics before the flame consumed the building, but a lot of damage has been caused. Residents are devastated. One elderly monk said, "It's heartbreaking. We will do our best to restore the temple." The winds are incredibly strong, reaching up to 90 km per hour, making it extremely difficult for firefighters to control the blazes. The flames are spreading so fast that entire village has been evacuated within hours. A truck driver described the scene as like the apocalypse. In another area, a 79-year-old evacuee said, "The fire came down the mountain and fell on my house. The wind was so strong." Over 10,000 firefighters, police and military personnel have been deployed, along with helicopters from the United States military stationed in Korea. However, one of the firefighting helicopters crashed in the mountains of Wheesung on Wednesday, killing the pilot. Authorities are investigating the cause, and they have not come to a conclusion. The fire have already burned through 17,000 hectares, that is 42 acres of land, making it the third largest wildfire disaster in South Korea's history. Officials say that more than 200 buildings have been damaged or destroyed, including some ancient temples and even historical villages. A UNESCO World Site has also been damaged, or they are saying the fires are about to reach to the area. Firefighters are racing to prevent the flames from reaching that particular village. So the question is, why are fires so bad this year? Wildfires are not very common in South Korea, and large-scale ones are even more rare. However, this year has been very different. So far 244 wildfires have been reported. This is 2.4 times more than last year. Experts say this is due to unusual dry weather and below average rainfall. Strong winds are making it hard to control fires, and human negligence is also one of the important causes. The acting President Han has promised that once the crisis is under control, the government will review all wildfire prevention strategies to ensure that this doesn't happen again in the future. Officials have also planned to crack down on illegal burning and introduce a strict fire safety rule in the area. This level of wildfire damage is unlike anything we have experienced before. This was the part of statement that the acting president had gave recently. With no rain in sight, the battle against South Korea's third worst ever wildfires is far away from over. The country now faces a difficult task of containing the flames and preventing even more discussions. We hope everything gets better. Let's dive into the crisis unfolding in Turkey. We'll explain how a single arrest has sparked nationwide protest and what it means for the country's future. If you're not familiar with Turkish politics, don't worry. We'll break it down in simple terms, step by step. Turkey's president has been in power for more than 20 years. Once seen as a strong leader with big dreams for the Muslim world, he now struggles to control even his own city. The story begins with the arrest of Istanbul's mayor, a key political figure who was set to challenge the president in the future. Last week, Turkish officials took the mayor into custody on corruption charges, and many believe that these charges are politically motivated, meant to stop him from running for president in coming elections. This arrest has sparked that lit nationwide protest. For the past 7 nights, thousands of people have taken to the streets of Turkey. These protests are not just about one arrest. They're about a powerful expression of public anger against what many see as decades of mismanagement by the president. Critics say that under his rule, Turkey has lost many of its good qualities, such as fair elections, an independent judiciary, and the secular values that once defined this nation. People are frustrated with rising unemployment, soaring inflation, and a shrinking space for free speech. They feel that president's policies have not only hurt economy but also imposed strict conservative Islamic rules that limit personal freedoms. His supporters say he is protecting the country, but many ordinary citizens feel that he is dismantling Turkey's democratic values. The protests have been widespread and intense. In Istanbul, students from various universities gathered in Mecca Park and marched towards the central area demanding, and I quote, "government resign." Protesters are calling for early elections and a change in leadership. At the same time, riot police has been deployed to maintain order, and there have been reports of pepper spray being used against peaceful demonstrators. And this is a very big thing. The opposition party, the Republican People's Party, which is Turkey's main opposition party, has been leading these rallies. They see the mayor as a symbol of hope for change. Party leaders have promised more rallies, with one major protest planned for Saturday in a large square in Istanbul. They urge people to stand stronger, call for transparent trials, and demand accountability from the government and the president. However, the president and his supporters are not taking this lying down. In his speeches, President has blamed the opposition for stirring up violence and chaos in the country. He called them primitive and weak, insisting that those who want to turn Turkey into a place of chaos have nowhere to go. His government claims that the protests are illegal and has already detained over 1,400 people. This includes students, journalists, and lawyers. Critics, however, say that these arrests are a part of broader crackdown on dissent. The situation in Turkey is complex. While President has managed to hold on to power for more than 2 decades, his grip is weakening as more citizens voice their frustrations and concerns. His long tenure has seen both economic growth and serious setbacks, like the dramatic collapse of Turkish lira, which was hurt many families. Now, with each protest and every arrest, the gap between President's promises and the public's reality becomes more obvious. This crisis in Turkey is a wake-up call. It shows that even long-standing leaders can lose the trust of their people when they fail to address everyday problems like joblessness, inflation, and loss of freedoms. As the protests continue, Turkey faces an uncertain future, one where the next step taken by both the government and the opposition could shape the country's future for the years to come. Let's discuss a major change in United States election rules that could affect how millions of Americans vote. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that requires people to show a proof of citizenship when they register to vote in federal elections. This new rule is designed to tighten election security, but it has already sparked heated debate in the country. So, what does the new order say? The order is simple. If you want to register to vote in a federal election, you must now provide documentary proof of your US citizenship. It also requires that all ballots must be received by the election day. The order claims that the United States has not been enforcing basic election protections, and it asks states to share their voter lists with federal agencies. If state refuses to follow this, they could lose federal fundings. The question is, why is Trump making the change? Well, Trump has long argued that the US election system is vulnerable to fraud. He has often claimed, even without strong evidence, that many voters are being cast by people who aren't citizens, especially through mail-in ballots. By requiring a proof of citizenship, Trump says he wants to restore confidence in US elections and prevent the fraud. His critics, however, say that election fraud is extremely rare and that these new rules may create more problems than they solve. So the question is, how could this affect the voters? For many Americans, especially those who are not familiar with the extra paperwork, this change could be confusing. An estimated 9% of US citizens of voting age, or around 21 million people, may not have a single way to prove their citizenship, according to a report. This could include married women who have changed their names and do not have updated documents. In some states, similar requirements have already led to problems, like in New Hampshire, where new rules caused confusion during local elections. It's important to note that elections in the United States are mostly run by states, not the federal government. This is a very important point to note. The Constitution gives states the power to decide how and when elections are held. This means that while Trump's order pushes for a nationwide change, many states might resist or challenge it in court. Some states already use systems that accept mail-in ballots even if they arrive after election day, as long as they are postmarked correctly. Trump's order would force these states to change their rules or face penalties like losing federal funds. Seems like he's using money for everything. Supporters of the new order, including many Republicans, argue that it is necessary to secure the voting process. They believe that requiring proof of citizenship will prevent illegal voters and keep elections fair. Some even see it as a welcome action to secure elections and prevent what they call the foreign influence. On the other hand, voting rights groups and Democrats are very concerned. They argue that the order could end up disenfranchising many eligible voters who simply do not have access to citizenship documents. Democratic lawmakers call this order misguided and immoral, arguing that it is an example of the federal government overreaching into states-controlled elections. Some legal experts believe this order will face serious challenges in the courts in the times to come. This new executive order is just one part of the broader debate about how elections should be run in the United States of America. It comes at a time when Republican National Committee is also pushing to review how voters' registration lists are maintained. Trump himself has said that this order is just the beginning, that more changes could be coming soon. So the bottom line here is that while Trump's order aims to make US elections safer by requiring proof of citizenship, it could also make voting more complicated for many Americans, some 9% Americans. Whether this move will improve the system or cause more problems is something that only time and let's say the courts will decide. After 1,126 days of conflict, there may be a glimmer of hope for peace in one crucial area of Russia-Ukraine war, at least on the high seas. On March 26, after 3 days of talks in Saudi Arabia, Russia and Ukraine agreed to a naval ceasefire in Black Sea. Today we are breaking down what this deal means and whether it could bring a bigger peace to stop this fighting. So let's start with basic. What is the Black Sea deal? Simply put, the agreement calls for both Russia and Ukraine to stop using force in Black Sea. This means that both nations have committed to ensuring safe navigation in this important trade and travel route. The deal also requires that neither side will use commercial vessels for military purposes. Moreover, the United States has announced that it will work to enforce a ban on strikes targeting energy infrastructure in both the countries. It all seems very good, but there is an important twist. According to Kremlin sources, the Black Sea ceasefire will only take effect after some sanctions are lifted. This condition adds a layer of complexity as it ties the success of the ceasefire to broader geopolitical moves. While the US and other international players are pushing for agreement as a step towards reducing violence, Moscow insists that easing certain sanctions is necessary for deal to work effectively on the ground. The deal is the latest effort by the United States to broker a pathway to peace. President Donald Trump has long advocated for ending the war quickly, insisting that the loss of life on both sides must stop. US officials stated that both Moscow and Kiev agreed to, and I quote, ensure safe navigation, eliminate use of force, and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes. In simple terms, they want to make the Black Sea a neutral zone where trade and travel can occur without the threat of military action. While the agreement is a promising development, there are reasons to be cautious. The ceasefire applies only to the Black Sea, not to the larger battlefield on land. And this is where the fighting is still continuing. Additionally, Moscow's caveat linking the ceasefire to lifting of sanctions raises the question about how strictly both sides will adhere to the deal of ceasefire. Experts worry that without robust enforcement and clear follow-through, the fragile maritime ceasefire may not lead to lasting peace. So the question is, why safe navigation in Black Sea is vital? This is crucial for global trade, especially for energy supplies. Disruptions in this region could have a rippling effect on international markets throughout the world. By establishing a safe zone in Black Sea, the deal could help stabilize not only the region but also global economic interests. However, the conditions attached by Moscow means that the ceasefire success will depend heavily on diplomatic negotiation around the sanctions, and it seems very difficult to come to a consensus. The coming weeks will be crucial in testing the strength and durability of this agreement. US officials have pledged to continue facilitating discussions between Russia and Ukraine, hoping that this naval ceasefire in Black Sea can pave the way for a broader peace settlements. Both sides will be closely monitoring to see if they abide by their commitments, and international pressures will likely increase if either side deviates from this Black Sea ceasefire. This brings me to the last story tonight. As tensions between Israel and Hamas continues to escalate, the fate of remaining hostages has taken the center stage. In a chilling statement, Hamas has warned that any Israeli attempt to retrieve hostages by force will result in return, and I quote, in coffins. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has countered with a severe threat of his own. If Hamas does not release all the hostages, Israel will begin seizing more territory in Gaza. On Wednesday, Hamas released a statement declaring that it is doing everything possible to keep the occupation's captives alive, but blamed Israeli bombardment for putting them at risk. The militant group explicitly warned that any Israeli rescue mission could be met with deadly consequences. Hamas declared every time the occupants attempt to retrieve its captives by force, it ends up bringing back in coffins. The statement follows several failed Israeli rescue attempts that have resulted in hostages being killed, as well as the deaths of Israeli soldiers and Palestinian civilians. The group claims Israel's aggressive military actions are making it impossible to ensure the safety of those still in captivity. What's the response? In response, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had made it very clear that Israel will continue exerting maximum pressure on Hamas. He stated, and I quote, "The more Hamas persists in its refusal to release our hostages, the stronger the pressure we will exert." This includes the seizure of territories along with other measures. I will not elaborate on it. This is what he said. This settlement aligns with the recent warning that Israeli Defense Minister, who openly stated that Israel could begin annexing parts of Gaza if Hamas refuses to negotiate. Since the ceasefire ended last week, Israel has resumed its military operations in Gaza with full force. The Palestinian Health Ministry, now run by Hamas, reports that at least 830 people have been killed since the strikes resumed, including 38 people in last 24 hours alone. In a rare and surprising turn of events, hundreds of Palestinians in northern Gaza took to the streets this week in an anti-Hamas protest. Protesters in Beit-Lahiya chanted slogans such as "Hamas out" and "Hamas terrorists," expressing their frustration over the ongoing war and the devastation. One protester talked to AFP and he said, and I quote, "I took part to send a message on behalf of the people. Enough with the war," he claimed. Hamas security forces in civilian clothing attempt to disperse the protests. The hostage crisis remains a critical issue in this conflict. Of the 251 people kidnapped by Hamas during October 7 attack that triggered this whole war, 58 remain in captivity. The Israeli military believes that at least 34 of them have already been dead. During the first phase of ceasefire in January, Hamas released 33 hostages, 8 of whom were already deceased. In exchange, Israel freed approximately 1,800 Palestinian detainers. However, with negotiations breaking down and hostilities escalating, the fate of remaining captives hangs in the balance. The conflict shows no signs of easing. Hamas is holding firm, warning of dire consequences if Israel attempts further rescues. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's government is doubling down on threats of territory expansion. The next move by both sides could determine whether the war continues to intensify or if diplomatic efforts can break the deadlock. One thing is clear: every day that passes, the humanitarian toll grows heavier, and the chances for peace seems even more distant than ever. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight. I will see you tomorrow. Good night.